his co-stars as we go behind the scenes in Gone with the Wind, the making of a musical. And at 9, a chance to see the classic original with Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh, Gone with the Wind.
Theatre is storytelling, and telling a story through music is as viable as telling a story through poetry, through heightened language, through street slang, whatever, or indeed through mime. I mean, whatever one's chosen medium, it is entirely to do with storytelling, human storytelling. And Gone with the Wind has got all of those factors. But will it prove to be something that people in droves want to go and see? Only if the word goes round. Only if people say, no, really, you should go and see that because there's something special or something different or something moving about that. Then it will work.
In 1936, Margaret Mitchell wrote a sweeping tale of struggle, survival, and passion, set against a backdrop of the American Civil War. This Pulitzer Prize-winning debut novel would go on to become one of the best-selling books of all time, a book whose story and characters were so universally compelling that 3 years later it would be adapted into one of Hollywood's most successful and enduring films ever. Now, in 2008, Gone with the Wind the musical will hit London's West End. For its writer, Margaret Martin, it is an intense personal journey that has been over 10 years in the making. For its producers and director, it is a unique and immense project that will push the boundaries of musical theatre. And for its cast and crew, it is the opportunity to work alongside some of the most respected and influential talent on one of the most highly anticipated musicals of recent years. This is the story of how one woman's tenacity and self-belief may, against all the odds, turn out to be a hit. This is the story of Gone with the Wind, the making of a musical. Atlanta today is almost unrecognizable from the city it was 150 years ago. In 1861, economic discord and rising tensions between the South, whose principles and ideals of tradition, society, and slavery clashed with the industrialization and progressive visions of the free Union states of the North. This irrepressible conflict would ultimately lead to the onslaught of the American Civil War, a war which would result in the abolition of slavery and a United States which forged America as we know it today.
The American Civil War is the fulcrum moment in American history. But that war scarred America and changed American history, and of course, its avowed aim as of halfway through the war was achieved, which was that there should be the complete emancipation of the slave population.
Slavery was an institution that lasted hundreds of years in the States. And the Civil War is the great crucible of the American experience. And this story is set in that time, and we're brought to understand the events through the experiences of specific characters. There's no single black experience. There's very different points of view of the different black characters, just as there are very different points of view of the different white characters.
In 1936, this defining moment in American history was to be the backdrop to Margaret Mitchell's Pulitzer Prize-winning debut novel, a sweeping epic spanning the whole of the Civil War and its aftermath. The book dealt with a range of political issues and centered around the lives and struggles of its main characters, but ultimately it is an epic love story, as resonant today as it was over 70 years ago.
The Old South, with its gentility, with its hauteur, its sense that it had a refinement that was far greater than any of the new immigrant areas of America, is represented by Ashley Wilkes and Ashley Wilkes' family. And the entrepreneurial vigor of new America is very much represented by Rhett Butler. And Scarlett is hopelessly attached to the past and everything that Ashley Wilkes stands for, and endlessly intrigued by the future and everything that Rhett Butler stands for.
There hadn't been a character like Scarlett O'Hara before. It's almost unthinkable that somebody like that, could have existed in 19th century society, whether it's in this country or America or wherever, and a fantastic opportunity for a heroine to exist in those times.
There's something about it being set with the background as the Civil War, and yet these two people, Rhett and Scarlett, sort of unwillingly joining together to get through it, and in the midst of that falling in love, and yet being horrible to each other. And I think it's interesting to come and watch that dynamic, to see how they, at different times, are desperately in love with each other and can't come together.
The relationship between Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara is one of the most endearing, enduring love relationships of all time.
The book's success meant that it was only a matter of time before Hollywood's major studios expressed interest in bringing Gone with the Wind to the big screen. In 1939, having secured the movie rights, producer David O. Selznick, alongside Louis B. Mayer and MGM, enlisted the directorial talents of Victor Fleming to deliver one of the most successful and enduring films of all time.
The film of Gone with the Wind is absolutely legendary because it achieved an adaptation of Margaret Mitchell's book in phenomenal detail.
If you look at the figures, Gone with the Wind, the celluloid movie, is the most successful film of all time if you take into account inflation. So if you just think about that, in essence, it's bigger than Titanic or any of the films that you would care to mention in the last 20 years. And so we as a generation have grown accustomed to, and my parents' generation are very in tune with and recognize the images of the film. And I think that the thing that is so important, and the thing that really resonates, isn't necessarily the image of the setting of Gone with the Wind and that lush, gorgeous texture and the lighting that we remember from the film. It's the characters and the idea, the story of survival, and the incredible backdrop of the Civil War, and these incredibly deep and complex characters that we grow to love and hate.
Kathleen, who's there? Who? That man looking at us and smiling. The nasty dog.
My dear, don't you know? That's Rhett Butler. He's from Charleston. He has a most terrible reputation.
The star pairing of Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh, coupled with the film's detailed character and plot development, immediately captured the public's imagination, breaking all box office records and forging a legacy that still resonates today.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I am here just as a spectator. I want to see Gone with the Wind the same as you do. And this is Margaret Mitchell's night and the people of Atlanta's night. Allow me, please, to see Gone with the Wind as a spectator. Thank you.
With the success of the novel and the film now firmly established, one woman's vision of the next chapter of Gone with the Wind was starting to unfold. Through sheer determination and ambition, Margaret Martin believed that a musical adaptation could bring this timeless story to a new audience.
She read the novel. She felt that Scarlett and she had a great deal in common. She was a trained musician, never written anything for the theater, ever. Manages to be so moved by the book that she had decided that she could write a musical. Now, most people can't write a play, but she said, I can do this. And she did.
What did I have to lose? But 10 years of my life. And all the development costs, which I had to earn myself and risk myself. It's a lot of money. But I went after it and I did it. At that point, I had spent 4 years working on the material. And no, I would rather be bold and go for it and fail than wimp out and wuss out and say, oh, well, too much for me, I won't try it. Clearly, if the material, if the work wasn't good, they wouldn't have given me the rights, and Trevor would never have come on board.
I received through the post, just dropping onto my front doormat, a package which contained a synopsis outline and sample script of an adaptation of Gone with the Wind, and a CD recording of 4 songs. And I was very struck by the ambition of the project. And that weekend, driving down to a place in the country, the piece was given what I call the Volvo test. And on this occasion, my daughter said, oh, that's a wonderful song. Can we hear it again? And indeed, I played it again, and then there was another song, and both kids said, oh, it's lovely, that's wonderful. I didn't think any more about it, but the next morning, I woke up singing something really rattling around in my head. And I kept thinking, what is that? What is it? Is that something I've done? What is that? Why do I know this tune so well? Oh my God. It's the song from the CD yesterday.
Gone with the Wind wanted to be on stage. Gone with the Wind wanted to express itself. Gone with the Wind needed someone who wouldn't be scared off by the project.
And so we started talking, and the rest is history.
Now, after an epic tale of its own, and with nearly 12 weeks until opening night, we follow the journey of Gone with the Wind, the making of a musical. London, February 2008. And finally, the key players are together in one room, taking the first steps to bringing this ambitious project to the stage.
Of course, we are 1 week from beginning our rehearsals. And we should waste no time getting into our meeting.
Uniquely in theatre work, musicals seem to be organisms that are trying to break up and hurl themselves into destruction every day that goes by. There's a kind of energy of let's all somehow rip it apart and argue and we're all following different goals. And we know that if we can only reverse that energy and say everything is focused on the same intention, that kind of wild energy can be a wonderful, thrilling thing to make the impossible work. We've all got to be aware of that. We've all got to be aware of communicating as fully as possible, cohering as fully as possible, and realizing that we are contributing to something that at the moment is not in any way conventional.
The Jerwood space in South London will be their home for the next 5 weeks, giving them the opportunity to plan for the forthcoming rehearsals. After 2 years of workshops and auditions on both sides of the Atlantic, the cast are finally in place.
I conducted a big search in this country and couldn't find the person that I was looking for. And the search was extended to America.
Jill, our Scarlett, was the most natural Scarlett we found. We did a workshop here I think 2004. And Jill was here in London at the time, and she played Scarlett for us in our workshop, and she was brilliant.
The chance for this sort of unknown girl from America to come in and play such an amazing part seemed unbelievable and like it shouldn't happen, and yet how true that it would happen, since Vivien Leigh was at the time sort of unknown in Hollywood, and this sort of role discovered her.
Oh, now, Miss Scarlett, you come on.
So, you know, I did the workshop, and then year after year, every time I would sign a new contract with a new show or whatever, I would get written in and out for Gone with the Wind in case it should happen. Until finally I stopped asking, because it just seemed like it wasn't going to happen. And then, of course, as soon as you let go of that idea, then you get the call that it is happening. And you have to sit down for a minute because you can't believe that it is indeed happening.
I was asked to sing a couple of songs on the demo recording that they had put together, I guess that had come out of a workshop. And so, yeah, so I sang a couple of songs on that recording, and that got sent off and did whatever it had to do, and time goes on, and you go off and you do other pursuits, and you know, as a jobbing actor, you do other things. But in the back of my mind, I'd always kept Gone with the Wind as something that I hoped desperately that would come to fruition.
It was an interesting process because the auditionees were invited into the room, and we got to sit down, actually, and have a conversation with the director and producer, those kinds of things. And that doesn't normally happen in auditions that I go to. I have to come in, sing really fast, hope they ask me to stay, and get out. So it was a warm, very warm experience to audition.
The search went on both in England and America. And eventually, late one evening, somebody walked into the audition room who I had never seen before in the whole of my life. And he was 6'4", he had black hair and very dark brown eyes and a very mischievous expression. And then he started to sing, sensationally powerful voice, really potent, stronger in the sort of lower baritone range than the tenor range, and that was exactly what we were hoping for.
He sings like a dream. He came into the auditions, opened his mouth and sang, and on each consequent audition got better and better. He was just so malleable that in leaps and bounds, by the final audition, there was no question that this was to be our Rhett Butler.
If you were going to be Rhett Butler, there was a sense of Rhett. Rhett is about the future. Rhett was what was going to be America. Can an actor who isn't an American embrace that? Well, we found a great actor.
You've been taken in my own craft. Through a series of 6 auditions, I came back and forth from Los Angeles to London and performed for the casting agents, and then Trevor, and then Trevor, and then Trevor, and then Trevor again and again. And it was just the most incredible process of jumping through hoops. Some of them were often on fire. Some of them I didn't really know how to overcome. And yet it was an absolute joy, each step of the process.
With everyone's minds now firmly focused on the rehearsals, the reality of the project becomes apparent, as the team that will bring this production to life are assembled.
Nice to meet you, Natasha. How are you?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like very much to introduce to you Aldo Scrofani, who is our executive producer.
I stare at all of you, and I marvel that I'm actually staring at all of you. And the reason why I'm staring at all of you, for one person in the room, this adventure began 10 years ago. For at least two people in the room, it began a little over 5 years ago. For my producing partners, it began 2 years ago or so. For some of you in the workshop, it began 4 years ago. And here we are. And I know that there have been many times in which we may have doubted that we would ever get here, including myself. We are here. Well, we're now all assembled, and I know that our director would love to spend some time with his cast. Trevor.
Perhaps I should just say a couple of words before making this division a bit more permanent. My name is Trevor Nunn. I'm the director, and I really want to say two things. The very first job I did in the professional theatre, we had 2.5 weeks rehearsal. And having only done amateur productions up until then, I thought that was a lavish amount of time. And then when we had to get the show open, I remember so distinctly feeling, if only we'd had 2 or 3 more days, I could have really achieved something. And it was scheduled just a little bit too short. And then eventually I got a job at Stratford-upon-Avon, and the first show I did there had a 6-week rehearsal period. And just before we were to open, I thought, why don't they give us 7 weeks? Because it's just too tight for something this complex and something this important. You know, what's wrong with a 7th week of rehearsal? And so it has been. And so when I tell you that Margaret and I have been working on this together over a 4-year period, and now we come to the first day of rehearsal, you won't be at all surprised to hear that we're not quite ready. and we are about to embark on a rehearsal period in this room of 5 weeks, and then a further period of time in the theatre before we open to a preview at the very beginning of April. And I will definitely be saying, I guarantee I shall be saying to everybody in this room, we didn't have quite enough time.
With the introductions taken care of, director Trevor Nunn and his team embark on an intensive schedule that will see the company take to the stage in less than 8 weeks, with 36 actors preparing to play the roles of Gone with the Wind's 100 characters.
Okay. 5, 6, go.
So, the women are coming down and the guys are moving around. So I'll just count you in and we'll just see how you get on. What are we doing with the new girl?
Where do they end up? Well, we talk
I
from one
think
side, one side.
you should end up here. You should end up in the center. And then end up facing... Now you've got... 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah? Now let's have a look at this.
When the show starts rehearsals, we'll have been working on the show for maybe 2 years. After that process, it starts, these 120 people really carry the ball. And there's a lot of hand-holding during that time. There's a lot of support needed by the writer, and a lot of support for the director, because the director is supporting everyone else.
Trevor has a gift with words and staging characters and actors in a way where they speak without speaking. You know, there's very little about the way Trevor mounts a production that isn't always communicating with you in a very brilliant fashion.
So, let's do that one more time.
Once upon a time, my body
1870 became 1871.
Captain Butler, he start giving money away. The folks he say ain't got nothing. What needs a helping hand.
Red, you keep giving your money away.
My dear, I've explained before, no gifts are involved. Winning the peace is always harder than winning the war. There are thousands of slaves that have to be made a part of this country, their country.
But it's the same for everybody in the South. We've all had to learn the hard way.
No, we were never slaves.
The key to the production's success will lie with the music. Having been presented with Margaret Martin's initial melodies and lyrics, it now falls to arranger Gareth Valentine to bring these songs to life.
Let's look at humming at bar 11.
I met Margaret Martin, and what's clear is that she has a modest musical training, and by that I mean I think she had piano lessons and is able to both read and write music, but at a very rudimentary level. The thing that she does have is a really good instinct and a flair for melody, so she's a rather accomplished melodist. So what I was presented with from Trevor were these tunes. So you could say that's the skeleton, that we have really rather good tunes, and lyrics, because she's the lyricist too.
What I love about musical theater is it provides the opportunity to express really large emotions. People sort of laugh about, oh, the action goes along and then someone sings, but they don't just sing any old place. They sing at a place where the things they need to express can't be expressed in normal speaking. It needs a bigger palette, and that's where the song comes in. And so it's very specific where songs come in.
So the principle of what Gareth did, I think, is what seems natural, which is to join in some way on the moment of their birth, and join in some way on Soul on Earth, and Except Through Love also seems to want some kind of harmony, yeah? So let's just focus in on that.
All men fight for freedom from the moment of their birth. Sword and tune may free the body, but for every soul on earth, the chains that bind the spirit can't be loosed except through love. But hope will follow on the wings of a
Now, there was a song called Just Two, which Margaret came along with, Just Two, exclamation mark, and the exclamation mark's there for a very good reason, because This is the point at which Rhett has just about had it with Scarlett. The end of this song is the moment when he gets hold of her and he takes her in that famous scene up the stairs to the bedroom, and we know what happens next. So underneath this, I needed to get some agitation, so I think a good analogy might be that one of galloping horses. Already we've got agitation. We know there's something, there's turmoil. And over that comes the voice.
Why have I descended into mindless things like these? I can live the life I choose and do just as I please. I don't give a damn how I'm perceived, but I could never have believed I'd ever stand a saddle and
So all this trills and wow. So it's just full of busyness and movement and discord and angular things because he's angry.
As the show begins to take shape behind closed doors, Gone with the Wind still needs to be brought to the public's attention.
Excuse us, please.
In an ever-competitive environment, the marketing of a musical is an essential part of its success.
This is Jill Paice, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi.
And Darius. I know.
Hey.
We like our view, don't we?
What a beautiful
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good
How's it
balcony
going?
work.
Right, would you like to take it?
Oh,
sure. Darius, straight ahead. And one more down here, please.
A photo shoot and radio interview are the first opportunities for the leads to be presented to the press.
Are you worried about the views of the critics at all, or frankly, my dear, do you not give a damn?
I like that. Well, it's a great challenge whenever such an iconic figure is being portrayed on the stage, and that is partly relieved by the fact that we are absolutely being faithful to the book in terms of the portrayal of not just the characters but the love story and the themes of war and redemption. And certainly for me, it's a great challenge as an actor to take on a role that's so well known.
The word is spreading. Gone with the Wind, the musical, will open in April 2008 at the New London Theatre.
It took us about 5 years to develop the piece and to sort out what our vision for presentation was going to be. And the New London became a big focus of ours. There was a show playing here, and it took us about a year to convince the Really Useful group to give us that theater. Once we were told that we had the theater, of course, we had to convince John Napier to come out of retirement. So one day, we were here at the theater. We had invited John because the theater owner was stripping the house, and we had decided to eliminate everything in the house. And John showed up 10:30 in the morning, rather grumpy, with a cup of coffee. And I was a bit nervous because I was sitting in this rather massive empty space with not a thing in it. And John blurted out and said, "So why am I here?"
They were refurbishing the theatre. So they'd taken all the seats out. The place was a box, and a pretty ugly box. I mean, if you saw it in its raw state. And I walked through this door and went, okay, this is a challenge. And I think he's onto something. And as I keep telling people, my entire career, I'm not a scene designer. I don't do scenery. I do things in theaters that make the moment work. I've never had a style. I don't believe in concept. I don't believe in there being a system. I believe in being a punter, being an audience member, or going into a building and either being entertained or informed or just enjoying the communal activity. There are so few. It's so rare these days that we have, and we're still clutching onto it, where you have people gathering to witness other people gathering and where storytelling goes on. There's no other theatre in London where every single seat in the house feels so intimate.
It's amazing, but I just wonder where the seats are.
No, look, the seats go right up to the edge.
They go right to the edge?
Right to the edge, you see there? They go complete against every bit of this edge, all the way around and all the way there. And you know the crossover?
Uh-huh.
Remember the walkway? There's one that goes completely around this way, and it's made up. So the seats will go from here to here. Then there's a space.
So people are going to be passing right behind.
Well, not people, but I imagine
exactly.
our cats. Well, they're people.
And are there seats up there?
The seats go all the way around. This is all added when we got here. This wasn't here. So what we spent all that time doing with steel was to build that structure, the gantry, and then underneath. And we've added 125 seats to the overall capacity by using John's design.
With the set reaching completion, thoughts now turn to the final details of costume and makeup.
Theatre, as opposed to film, has to be slightly larger than life. The film camera can come in quite close. Also, the clothes are only worn for an hour at most. In the theatre, costumes have to, first of all, they have to project to the end, to the last seat. And it's not just the costume that you're projecting, you're helping the actor project the image that you've chosen for him, or he has chosen, or the director, to the last seat in the house. The fashion changes quite a bit from the crinoline, which is at its widest, to the bustle. So we have halfway through the Gone with the Wind, we do have a change. I haven't a clue how many costumes there are at the moment. I really haven't counted them. And of course there's the wigs, because you change people, because it's a cast that's playing multiple characters, you can't just change the frock or the suit. You have to introduce each character and in a way try and say something about them at first sight.
After 5 weeks' rehearsals at the Jerwood Space, it's time for the cast to move on. They arrive at the New London Theatre for the first time. Here they will finish rehearsals and familiarise themselves with the venue that will be at the centre of their lives for the next year.
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm fine, I'm fine.
I'm Darius.
Leon.
Nice to meet you, Leon.
Hey,
it's good to be here. Right, which one of these do I sign?
This one is for you.
Fantastic.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. And that's just for the green room. You haven't seemed to see this. I know some of you have. Look, welcome. Welcome to the green room. Welcome to your new home for the next year, or whatever it is.
22 years.
22 years.
Until today, the only idea of what the theater was going to look like or what the set might be for the cast has been the review of the model, which John had built. And while the model is rather detailed, it cannot really be representative of what happens when you're inside the space and suddenly you realize that the audience and the company are both inhabiting a space in which a story is being told.
Well, it's amazing that how lifelike the model really was. Like, it looks like the model. What I didn't realize is that there are people going to be sitting right there, sort of looking up at you. They're really going to be close to the stage.
Amazing. This is just fantastic. It's so exciting. It's such an amazing set. I can't quite get my head around it. Since day one, we've been excited to see the theatre. And of course, John Napier has very famously designed this stage. He's one of the great stage designers in West End and Broadway history, and so to have him say that this is the biggest project he's ever worked on really built up the anticipation. Today is the first day that we've all got a chance to glimpse at it, and all I can say is that he's blown away all of our expectations. It's just nothing short of breathtaking.
Wow. Can I go up? It's so cool.
I'm blown away. It's absolutely incredible. It's kind of beyond words still, because we just walked in. We've only been in the space for like 5 hours now, and I still feel it's just, is it really happening? Are we really in this space? I can't believe it. I can't believe that we're starting to block the show in its environment. You know, in rehearsals, we of course, there's more scene work to be done and more reorganizing to be done, but we'd sort of reached a point where we couldn't do any more blocking because we weren't in our environment. And so now that we're there, I can't, it's really special.
After an overwhelming and emotional morning, Trevor Nunn is keen to return to the business of blocking the show.
Okay, stand by.
When the sun shines on the land in all its glory, and from your land up to the sky you lift your face, then you will know there is no ending to your story. For on your land your child will live and take your place. Yes, on your land your child will live and take your place. Is it crying? No. Well, I'm glad there's some pride in your pussy at the moment. Oh, you know, daughter. We'll be going into supper now.
Arm in arm, they've started up the drive.
Mr. Gerald! Miss Ellen, she went to the
Okay, hold that. Hold that. Well done, well done, well done.
It's late March, and whilst preparations continue at the New London, the orchestra gather at Sadler's Wells.
In terms of orchestras these days, it's a modest size, 13, but 13 does everything we want it to be. I mean, even if we had a band of 25, I think it's too big. We don't need a band that big to do what we intend to do, and especially in that space. Remember, you know, it's not the Gone with the Wind of Max Steiner, that big symphony orchestra, and Rhapsody, and great strings, and brass, and it's not that. We're telling the story in a much more intimate, much more modest, and in a way, a more truthful way. We're getting right back to the heart of the novel.
The music has come a long way since Gareth Valentine adapted the initial melodies. Orchestrator Bill Brown's score is handed to musical director David White, who gets the session underway.
This white box, which is very roughly our band area, we don't need to worry about it after this afternoon. Now that we've done this, we can spread out a little bit for the rest of the week. The only things that I feel I should say about the style of the piece at the moment is that it's not a musical, not in the traditional sense of the word. That's my judgment. I think that's a judgment that Gareth and I share. And that's to do with the state of mind of the writers and in particular Trevor's attitude towards it. And the place for the music in the score is one, I think, it's in a sense, it's like we are a living documentary. So a lot of our work is, I think, going to be to try and sound as though we're connected to
the smells and sounds of 1861 onwards. Okay, so I'm going to start with saying that was bar 1, tumbleweed, bar 2, bar 3. Tram lines.
The Sitzprobe, the moment when cast and orchestra are united, is a special occasion in any musical production. With just under 3 weeks until opening night, the excitement of hearing the songs in full is about to become apparent. The musicians are in tune, and after a quick vocal warm-up, the rehearsal can begin.
Welcome to the Sitzprobe, the most important day. You know, it's the one moment where we all come together in the same room and we realize that we are all part of the same company. It couldn't be more important. So, David, over to you.
So, obviously, for you as actors, the most important thing about this afternoon is that for the first time you hear what you're actually going to hear as a cue, as opposed to what you thought you were going to hear as a cue.
To put it into perspective, you know, the cast has been working in a rehearsal room for 7 weeks, and the band has been sitting here in this room for 2 weeks rehearsing. And for the entire time, the actors are hearing music, basically a melody on a keyboard. And so for the first time, it's sort of like Christmas. You know, you open up your Christmas gift and there it is. It's an entire orchestra supporting you, and it's a religious moment. I mean, a Sitzprobe is a sort of coming of age for a musical. When you get here, the very next step is within a few days of being here, you are on stage performing for an audience, and there's no turning back.
Is it true? I hear you wonder that he's never nervous. What if he makes the smallest blunder? Butler at your service. Tell us, Captain Butler. Tell us what you do. With the Yankee gunboats, we're surrounded, fog as thick as black. I sailed in without a sound, just inches from disaster.
It's been 6 weeks with the piano as a backing and as a guide and as a template for the whole cast to sing all the songs to and use as a guide for the entire show. We're here in the studio today with 14 of the most talented players any side of the Atlantic. One of the best arrangers in the world who's done the most incredible job of turning music for 14 players into something that sounds like an orchestra of 28 or more. So as a singer, it's such a privilege to stand in a room like this and sing with that kind of musicianship. But as an actor, it transforms the entire show.
He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They that turn their back on brotherhood, they turn their back on you. If we close our hearts to hatred, and we open them to love. Hope will follow on the wings of a dove, on the wings of a dove, on the wings of a dove. Hope will follow on the wings of a dove.
Our children are our future. We must teach them how to sing, help them learn to know the freedom that a loving heart can bring.
When all our children sing together, brotherhood and love, hope will follow on the wings of a dove.
The countdown is on. It's a bit like the Mission Impossible tape that you know was going to explode at a certain time once you've heard the message. We've not got much time to cram a lot of rehearsal into. We've done about as much as is humanly possible in 6 weeks. But we're right up against it now. 1 week left, and we're at that stage now where we've just for the first time played with the orchestra and sung with them. And we're only going to get one more opportunity to do this before the opening night. So when you put it into perspective, it's a bit like learning how to ride a bike for the first time. You've only got 2 shots at taking the stabilizers off. So it's a big challenge, but I think we're all excited and we're all in it together. So whatever happens on opening night, we won't be alone.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's working dress rehearsal.
With the show now complete, the dress rehearsal marks the end of this intense journey. There is no going back. In 24 hours, Gone with the Wind the musical will open to the public.
Is it true, I hear you wonder, that he's never nervous? What if he makes the smallest blunder? Butler, at your service.
Tell us, Captain Butler. Tell us what you do.
Please do.
With Yankee gunboats, we're surrounded, foggets, thick as plaster. I sailed in without a sound, just inches from disaster. Blockade running, how germane? The greater risk, the greater gain. I haven't yet had cause to regret old carpe diem. Running leaves no room for doubt. I'll run until my luck runs out. Meanwhile, let them catch me if they can. So tell me what's your pleasure, I'm your man.
Why is it a girl has to act so silly to catch a husband?
Those gentlemen don't know what they want, so giving them what they think they want saves a pile of misery.
Someday I'm going to do and say everything I want to do and say. And if people don't like it, I won't care.
Softly as a whisper, you're always in my mind, warming as the sun upon the land.
When the very best people come to call, the very best people of them all, then by association you will be accepted in Atlanta society.
Now, we must dispense with what this faithless coward has tried to do. I'll tell you how. Tonight in bed, my dear, instead of 3, you'll find there'll be just 2.
It for
This has been a tale of many stories. A personal journey that started with one woman's dream and grew to include the hopes and aspirations of many. For the show's director, writer, producers, cast, and all that were involved in this monumental project, the waiting is finally over. The stage is set, the costumes are ready, the orchestra is in tune, and the cast await their calls. But will this vision of Gone with the Wind find a place in the public's heart?
Every project you start on has got this 50-50 possibility. You know, the unlikeliest things work, the likeliest projects go down. You can't predict, but you can know that you're in a territory that if you pull it off, you can affect people profoundly.
Whatever the outcome, one thing is clear. No one could have predicted that 70 years ago, when Margaret Mitchell wrote her debut novel, its appeal would have been so enduring. From the book to the film, and now to the stage. The story of Gone with the Wind lives on for a new audience.
Up next on TCM.